Hey, what's going on, everyone? As you can see, little different setup for this week's virtual, I won't really call it a tasting experience. Why don't we call it a vineyard experience here at Wagner Vineyards? I'm Alex Shankowski, and for the next hour, weather permitting, internet connectivity permitting, of course, audio permitting, we're going to be talking a little bit about sustainability here at the Wagner Vineyards. And as you can see behind me, we got a great view of the lake right behind us. It doesn't matter if it's snowing or not here in April. We got a nice big toy behind us. Also, we'll show you a little bit later on what that does. Want to first, of course, thank everyone for the continued support that everyone has shown us here at Wagner Vineyards as we've continued to go through this unprecedented time. We hope all of you are safe and are doing well, and you have plenty of Wagner wine to enjoy with us. Leave comments as you can. I'm going to be scrolling up here as best as I can. If there's issues with audio or anything like that, just let me know. We'll do the best we can. We're kind of flying on the seat of our pants a little bit here, but I think it's going to be a really fun discussion. It's going to be a very unique discussion as well. I'm going to start to make my way over to our guests. Now, let us know what you're drinking as well. I know I initially said we were hoping that we could be up at the Kaywood Vineyard and you could have Kaywood East with you. We don't have that with us today. Unfortunately, we're not up there. We're going to be in Cabernet Franc Blanc. So if you got that with you, that's great. But anything that you're drinking, let us know and we'll shout it out. I'm going to switch over here and give you a look at the vineyards as we make our way over to John Wagner and his son, Ian Wagner. 215 acres of grapes here at Wagner. If I do a quick pan around, you can't even see the winery. Just gives you an idea of just how expansive the farm is here, how much work has to go into it year round. It's going to be something that we talk about a lot today, is that the work really never stops. And so, obviously, as work has had to stop for so many people, we've had a lot to do here. And as I say hello, of course, to John Wagner on the right, got to identify right and left here. Look kind of similar here. Ian, how's it going, Ian? Doing well. So John, of course, we talked with him last time, a couple weeks ago, of course, co-owner, vineyard manager. Ian, son of John, growing up amongst the vines as well, and also studied environmental science in college, came back here to work the family business. Today's topic of sustainability, could you just talk a little bit about what sustainable grape growing means to you as someone who grew up in this region, obviously cares deeply about the land here?
Yeah, sure, Alex. I think in this scenario, sustainability to me means being able to farm and produce these grapes and the wines that we do, and for an extended period of time over multiple generations, and then all while conserving the natural resources that make that possible.
Yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting to me is there's economic sustainability and environmental sustainability, right? And it's about finding that balance. And we're going to talk a little bit about a couple different techniques here that we use that we feel achieve both of those things, right, John?
Yeah, absolutely. You can't have one without the other, and we do a lot of things, as you spoke about. There's work all year long in the vineyard, and we're going to talk about some of those particular things that we do that we feel are necessary to keep vinifera vines alive and healthy in this kind of environment. We do experience some pretty cold temperatures in some winters, so there's necessary steps that we have to take. So yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of things. Hopefully we don't jump around too much. If you have any questions about anything to do with grapevines, soil, sustainability, equipment, anything, wines, let us know, and we'll try to do our best to answer them.
Okay, sounds good. And sounds like we're having a couple audio issues just from, not having the microphone yet. It's in the mail. We'll get that for the next one. I might just end up handing the phone to you guys, each time as we talk. Yeah, we can get. We're going to continue to practice our social distancing, but we're outdoors. We're doing the best that we can here. Ian, talk a little bit about what's happening right now in the vineyard. I mean, we just gone through pruning, correct?
Sure, we just went through pruning and actually just finished up that today, and we're tying now as well, which you can see in front of us.
Why don't you take that?
Sure. Tying here as well, so
Vines are wrapped out on the wire, a little twist tie on the end to secure them to the wire for the growing season. And want that back now.
Sure. Yeah.
And currently, real recently, we started working on the hill and D-hill, the D-hill portion of covering the graft unions of all vinifera varieties. So that would be I would say, the most significant job right now besides tying.
So when we talked about a graft union, John, kind of take me through what that means and why it would be so important that we have to hill these up.
Yeah, so let's get down a little closer on one of these. So the graft union, this is a Cabernet Franc vine. So the Cabernet Franc is the variety that we want to propagate the grapes from. It's called the Scion variety. There's a graft union here just above soil level that is kind of like an omega cut, like a puzzle piece. And below that is what's called rootstock. So for the winter time, we are very concerned with the buds of the Cabernet Franc vine. And if we get severe temperature swings from hot to cold, or we get an ultimate low temperature that's too low, it will kill the Cabernet Franc buds. If it kills all the buds, we end up with a dead vine. So what we do in the fall is we come through here with a piece of equipment and we gather the dirt from this side and from that side of the row, and we pile it up so that it covers the graft union. So this graft union is still covered up in the spring, which is really great. A lot of times the graft union by this time of the year will be exposed if you don't have a hill that's high enough. So why don't we leave the dirt piled up all year long? I can anticipate the question. Well, if we leave the dirt piled up all year long, then the Cabernet Franc vine will form its own roots into that, and we don't want that. We want the rootstock to have the roots because it gives certain disease prevention properties to the vine. So it's a necessary thing, we feel, to be sustainable. It's a ton of work to hill this dirt up every fall and to de-hill it in the spring, but we feel it's the only way that we can sustainably grow these vinifera varieties in this kind of an environment. So there's a lot of different ways that this can be done. Some people do it by hand, either with a shovel or a hoe. A lot of people now are using a called a Grape takeout hoe on a tractor, and we have one of those that we use on some of our more steep vineyards, but we've modified one of our old grape harvesters to be a hiller and a de-hiller. So Ian's gonna demonstrate that a little later, and we're gonna show how we can completely de-hill a row in one pass. And it's a job that has to be really done pretty timely. So the dirt has to be about the right consistency, and maybe Ian, you can talk about what we look for in the properties of the dirt before we can de-hill.
Sure, I just want to take a second here if everyone can let me know. Is the microphone better that way? I know the microphone's on the front of the phone, so we're trying to turn it a little bit so it's a little bit easier to hear. So if you want to hold it maybe while you answer that one.
Sure. Yeah, for the dirt properties for de-hilling, right now was pretty good today. Hopefully with the snow it's going to make things more complicated, but it can't be too wet, and we're hoping to not have a whole lot of sod in it or extra roots or weeds from last year. It makes it hill and de-hill easier. But moisture, I'd say, would be the most important part of that. If it's too wet, it makes it very difficult, and even sometimes if it's very, very dry, it's hard for the machine to get through and do the best job that it can. Maybe you got a question there.
Okay. All right. Oh, yeah, here's a good question for Marge asking, how far off the ground without hilling is the graft union?
We target about 2 inches. So when we plant the vineyard, we try to place the graft unions about 2 inches above grade, and that allows us to build a pretty high hill over them. but it also allows us to dehill and get the dirt down below the graft union in the spring. So we found that's about our sweet spot, about 2 inches above grade. So yeah, if you get them a lot higher than that, it's hard to cover them in the wintertime, and if you get them a lot lower than that, it's tough to dehill them and get the soil down below them in the spring. So
Sounds good. Sounds good. One of the other things I wanted to talk about is I'm going to kind of turn the camera so you can see in between the vines here, coming down the center row. You can see right now we got a good amount of grass. Seen a lot of other vineyards where that's not the case. You might not see much grass at all. You might see a bunch of different things. So, Ian, could you talk to me a little bit more about this center row column here, and you know why we have grass there, why we put sometimes also hay as well, kind of those properties, and what are the things we're looking for there?
Yeah, sure, Alex. We've gone away from, or we've moved in a direction from tilling the centers for weed control and trying to go more towards a more permanent sod strip. This can either be done by letting the natural vegetation grow, like, let's see, some of these centers, you can see different clovers and grasses and shorter weeds that are taking over, and that's going to permanently be in the center the entire year. The other option that we have, here, you want to flip that for me?
Yeah, sure. So they can hear you too.
Yeah, it's an OVN mixture, which is what's in this center right here, and this is a sample I'd gotten beforehand. This OVN stands for Orchard Vineyard Nursery Mixture, and it's a mix of shorter growing grasses. This one happens to be 2 different kinds of fescues and a ryegrass, which have certain properties like shorter growth but thick. You can tell it's thick mat, so it allows it to make a lot of roots throughout the entire top of the soil structure. On this side of it, I tried to get some of the dirt away, which was actually kind of difficult, but you can see how many roots is in there, and that really helps preserving the soil and helping with erosion, which on our different growing sites we struggle with in certain dips and valleys. But we've had better success in preserving our soils with having a permanent cover crop in between the rows.
Excellent.
One of the things that makes this a great site to grow grapes is the fact that the farm slopes from east to west, and it slopes all the way down to Seneca Lake, which makes for great air drainage in the wintertime. But as Ian pointed out, it also makes these soils highly erodible as far as if we get a real heavy rain. So we do everything possible to conserve this soil. This topsoil that we're standing on, we've farmed for generations, and we hope to farm it for many more generations to come. So you really have to conserve your soil. A lot of what shows in a vineyard is above ground, the posts, the wire, the vines, but we spend an inordinate amount of time on the soil health. We also, as Alex mentioned earlier, we bale about 150 acres of hay off the farm. And usually when Ian or I mention that, people are like, what are you baling hay for? Well, we bale, I'll let Ian talk about it since he does most of the haying, and he can explain what we do and why we do it.
There you go. It sounds like a glorious job. Please tell us more.
So, like you said, about 150 acres. This, what's it equal? Around 1,000? Yeah, 1,000 round bills, give or take a year. And we have an implement that we then take those round bales and unroll them in the rows, acting as a mulch layer to provide nutrients back into the soil, and soil or moisture conserving,
And a little bit of weed suppression.
Yeah,
we get out of that too. my father, Bill Wagner, used to mulch 50 years ago, and it was a lot less efficient then. We baled small hay bales and put them, in the beginning it was just a pitchfork off the back of a wagon to pitch them into a row, and then we've slowly gotten a little bit more efficient, and now we use the large round bales. And like Ian said, I think last year we did over 1,100 of these round bales to put in the vineyard. So a lot of work is going into the soil conservation and the health of the soil.
Cool. Getting a couple questions so far about de-hilling. I think it's because people saw the cool, awesome de-hilling machine behind me. So I'm going to combine two of these questions. Also a question, how many acres do we have? 215 acres of vines, but the farm itself is close to 600 acres. Okay, question number one from Christy. Has the de-hilling been started? And then Mary, how long does it take to de-hill all of the vines?
Oh yeah, we started de-hilling, must have been late last week, and I was able to do a couple days this week we started, and then I don't know total.
Yeah, so
depending on weather, I guess.
If we have a great day, we can do about 15 acres in one day, and that's a real good day of de-hilling. So we hill up all of our vinifera acres. So we've got 115 of vinifera that are hilled up, but it normally takes 2 to 3 weeks this time of the year, and we don't get the conditions perfect every day to do it. So some days we're all ready to go, but the soil's too wet. So the best thing to do sometimes is to stay out of the vineyard, and we've learned that the hard way too. And sometimes you're ready to do stuff, you have a crew and you want to do it that day, but if it's too wet, all you can do is damage when you get in the vineyard. You can do soil compaction with equipment, and that's a tough thing to recover from. So we do a lot of things pre-plant before we plant a vineyard and maybe we can talk a little bit about the deep ripping and the tiling if we have time.
Sure,
for that.
yeah. I mean, the one thing I was going to ask, maybe we can get one thing to talk about before is also looking at, I believe you call it terracing, correct? The way that, we're on a sloping vineyard, however, this is still a level ground, and how do we achieve that, and what's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so last year actually in this vineyard we terraced every other row, and we have a blade that goes on the back of a tractor that can level, and we take a little bit of soil off the top side and it scrapes it to the bottom side. So even though the land is at a slant, the actual center is fairly level. And after that process, then we went through and we drilled that OVN mixture, which I talked about earlier. And then hopefully that's it for working the soil in between the rows. And that's going to be a permanent cover crop mixture for however long we can keep it that way. And that'll slowly grow. We mow it throughout the season, but it doesn't require any more working of the soil.
And one of the main reasons we do the terracing is it's easier for equipment to get through if those centers are level. We have some pretty steep vineyards, and if your equipment is on a 30-degree angle, everything is a lot tougher. So if we can...
Yeah, that machine at a 30-degree angle kind of scares me.
Yeah. So a lot of our machines, like the one we are going to demonstrate today, has leveling capabilities. So we can raise the wheels on one side and lower the wheels on the other side to adapt to slopes. But by having the centers terraced, it just makes life a lot easier for all the different operations that we have to do in the vineyard. So
sounds good. One other question coming in here for Marge. Talking about the rootstocks, is it all the same rootstock? Do we switch it up for other certain varieties, or how do we go about picking those?
Yeah, so we have several different types of rootstocks. Primarily, we are on a 3309 rootstock, which is a pretty common one in the Finger Lakes. I would say probably the most common. And the properties that it exhibits are very good and matched up very well with the soils that we have on our farm. Pretty tolerant of a lot of different conditions. One of the things vines don't like is they don't like wet feet. And what does that mean? Well, they don't like their roots to be down into the water table. You need to have moisture in the soil, but you don't want to have standing water. So we do prior to planting a vineyard, we will install, this is perforated drainage tile, and some vineyards, this one has a couple miles of this, and we try to install it 4 feet down below the grade of the soil. And its purpose, it has small perforations in it. It's made out of plastic, and as the seasonal water table rises up in the soil and it comes to the level of the drain tile, it will find those perforations and it will get into this drain tile and flow out of the vineyard. And what that does is it keeps that seasonal water table down 4 feet below the surface, and that allows the vines to establish roots down to that depth. So it's been a huge gain in quality for us to be able to do that on all our new vineyards, because we're really establishing a deep root system in these vines, and that really gives them great uniformity throughout the vineyard and better winter survivability and just better ripening, better fruit characteristics, everything.
Yeah, versus the old tiles, which were...
Yeah, I mean, the old method that when I was a kid growing up, if you had a field and you were going to plant a vineyard, we would kind of historically know that this one corner had a little bit of a wet spot, and we would run just a spur tile to just that one spot. And that worked pretty well back then, but we weren't growing the same kind of varieties that we're growing now. For vinifera, you got to do everything right, and you kind of have one chance to do it right ahead of planting a vineyard. And so now we do pattern tiling. So throughout this vineyard, there's just rows and rows and rows and rows of this, and it really does a lot better job of keeping the entire vineyard uniform.
All right, well, we are getting some questions about the hiller and the de-hiller and asking if we can see that in action. So I think we should, we'll stop teasing now and actually show them how this thing works, huh? What do you say?
Yeah, maybe you can walk back there and we can explain it a little bit before it starts. And then if the demo goes well, we'll walk behind it with the camera and you can actually see it working. So.
Yeah, it's the one good thing where the microphone on the other side, I think, will actually help us in that regard. So why don't we head over toward it, and when we get there, we can talk a little bit on the outside, talk a little bit about the machine itself, and then Ian can hop aboard and show us some de-hilling. All right, let's walk this way. Another reminder of the great view that we have, whether it's snowing or otherwise. Seneca Lake looking gorgeous. Yeah, so here it is. This machine was a grape harvester, still is a grape harvester. Right now it has the center portion of it removed. The center portion is what actually shakes the canopy to get the grapes off. So that is removed. Once it is removed, we have an over-the-road tractor. Wheels on both sides of the row. And we've outfitted it to be able to pull the dirt off the vines in one pass. Ian will explain the sensors a little bit here in the front and what they do, and I'll go around back and show you the broad hose.
Yeah, so these two front sensors are connected to these two plows, which are the shiny pieces under here. And what their purpose is to trigger if they touch a vine or a post, they're on pivots, and they activate a switch, and it actually moves the whole plow system away from the vine or the post. If we didn't have it, that it would be very difficult to drive straight without connecting with vines or posts, which is never good. And there's a lot of different tweaks you can make depending on spacing and what varieties you're in and how young or old they are. And they're both on slides right here, and they slide back and forth depending on where that sensor's at.
So the plows will peel off most of that hill, and it will put it back into the furrow that was formed when the hill was put up. And then you're left with a narrow strip of dirt still around the vines, and that's the purpose. There's two brawn hose in the back, and these have sensors on them also, and they articulate around the vines. So as a vine goes through, they move out of the way, and then they come back around it, and that will remove the rest of the dirt. Got a couple scrapers on either side, and it does a pretty nice job when the soil's right. So we'll check it out.
All right, sounds good. Thank you to everyone who's been thanking us for braving the elements. It's our pleasure. Janice checking in from Massachusetts. I hope the weather there's a little bit nicer. I'll thank my sister, who I know is watching from California, for not rubbing in too much that it's snowing here, but we're doing the best we can. Delicate work from such a large machine, huh?
Success. No vines taken out. So they, you can see if Alex shines the camera back in there, how one side is significantly higher than the other side. And that kind of illustrates that terracing effect that we have here. And this machine is able to, with guide wheels, it can accommodate that different slope. So we're using this as a differential hiller to actually pull some of that dirt further up the hill.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, you can keep talking because you can. The microphone's on this side. So.
Yeah. So you can see we did a pretty nice job. We'll walk back here once Ian gets down, and we can see the graft unions a little better, and kind of show you what we achieved with that pass.
All right, a couple of questions actually that have come through. What rate of speed is possible, and what is the operator seeing in terms of possible error? Are you able to really see much when you're up there, or do you always need somebody kind of watching?
No, so we travel at about 1.8 miles per hour when we're dehilling, and we have a mirror right in front of the operator. So Ian is looking in that mirror, and he can see both the plows and he can see the brawn hose behind there, and we have controls up in the cab. There's certain old vineyards we have where the trunks might be a little bit an anomaly, like a very crooked trunk or a graft union that sticks way out to the side, and sometimes we have to manually open the plows or the brawn hose to get by them. So you can't go 4 miles an hour with this machine or it won't do a nice job. When we're hilling, we do go a little faster because we're not traveling quite as close to the vines when we're doing the hilling, so we can go a little faster with that. But on the dehilling, like I said, 1.8 miles an hour, and the operator is looking at a mirror constantly to be able to know when he needs to override some of the automatic controls.
All right. Ian, how long did it take you to master commandeering that vessel?
I'm still learning. I didn't bring any poles today.
Any horror stories?
If it's wet, there's a lot of horror stories.
Yeah.
The whole machine wants to slide downhill, and you don't have any room to slide really. So that's why the whole conditions really make a difference for that. And
you can see where the wheels of the machine are riding. They're right in the center of grass that we talked about. So look at that upper wheel. So in a traditional tractor drawn thing, you're always driving right next to the vine with your tires, versus this over the row, our footing and our wheelbase is sitting right out in that permanent sod. So it makes for a really nice rig, and we don't get soil compaction out of it. These are big flotation tires, and we really have very little impact as far as soil compaction.
Now, I know we touched on it earlier, but for those who might have been hopping on late, when is it time to dehill? When do you, is it specific time of year, or it's just weather, temperature? What are you looking for?
Springtime usually, yeah. After tying is done with this rig at least, and then I guess all weather conditions are kind of the
So you might be able to show the furrow. So this is a row up here above you that is not dehill, and I'll show you this. This is what I keep speaking of as the furrow. This hollow. So this hollow was formed right here when we took this dirt and piled it up on the vines. So in order to get equipment through these rows, we really need this filled back in. So we wait for the soil to dry out in the spring, and then we peel that hill down and fill those furrows back, and we can see this. We can see the graft union here now a little better. So just a little kicking with his boot, and Ian has exposed this graft union. You can kind of see, that's what we're talking about right there. That's the graft union. So from here down is rootstock, and from here up is Cabernet Franc, and that was well protected through the winter time because it was insulated with the soil that was above that graft union. This is a pretty typical vine in the way that we farm vinifera. We've got two trunks. We've got our fruiting canes up here that have been tied onto the wire, and And we also have a renewal, a 1-year-old cane that we've tied up from the base of the vine, and it's spare parts viticulture. In California, most vines have one trunk, and once they train the trunk up, it's more like a tree trunk. It might be 4 inches in diameter, and it lasts for the life of the vine. We have to periodically take these trunks out and replace them with a younger one that hasn't been through so many winters. So we do an awful lot to mitigate our risk, but these varieties, they're tough to grow, and it takes doing all the steps right to get them done right and make quality wine out of it.
Almost feels perfect, like this weather is perfect now, given the situation, especially when you're comparing this to California viticulture.
We're waiting for like the tennis ball size hail to start coming down, but no, it's we work in all different weather conditions, and if you don't, one of the things we should mention is we are all estate bottled, so all of our wines are from grapes that we grow, and it takes a tremendous amount of work all year long to get those grapes to where we need them, a level of quality at harvest time. So there's a lot of behind the scenes.
And thank you to everyone who's getting questions, and keep them coming. We're not going anywhere. The hands haven't frozen off yet. Question for Marge: how old are your oldest productive vines?
So we have some vines down in Valois that are about 75 years old. Those are own rooted plants. Our oldest vinifera vineyard is a 42-year-old Riesling block. That's kind of the lifespan that most people talk about for the ultimate lifespan of a vineyard, but this 42-year-old Riesling block is producing some phenomenal fruit. We love the flavors, and it's still going strong, but we're doing all these necessary steps and trying to keep it going as long as possible.
What are some of the outside of just continued maintenance, I guess, what's the check that you do to know that it's still it's still kicking, it still has some years left?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if the productivity of the vines significantly dropped off, you would probably say that those vines were ready to be replaced. And if we were going to do that, if we did have to take a vineyard out, which we do take varieties out all the time, kind of older varieties that we used to farm many years ago that aren't really conducive to our wine program now, we'll take those vineyards out, and then we take that opportunity to be able to pattern tile and really do a nice job of doing everything right the first time when we put a new block in.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, you mentioned this is 4-year-old Cabernet Franc here, but we also have, you can't see it here, but we're all in the process of going to be planting some more Cabernet Franc. There's a bunch of steps, obviously, but what's something that you start to look for when clearing out land, or what's a good piece of land that you're going to want to start planting on?
I think one of the biggest things we touched on a little bit before was the site and the slope of the site. So a lot of our newer vinifera blocks have a little bit of a slope to them, and that helps tremendously with air drainage. And on cold winter nights, that air is gonna rush down the hill if it's on a slope towards the lake, with the lake being warmer. I'd say another thing is not too steep, because then you get into troubles with soil erosion and difficulty with equipment. And then soil properties probably come into play quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Great. And John, I'm curious, that's about picking out the spot, but picking out the variety that you want to continue to grow or expand the amount that you grow. You mentioned, we're over now 50% vinifera wines here, but that's a constant, that's in flux, right? We're changing, we're ripping out things, putting in new things. Where does that decision come from?
Yeah, it's not like planting an annual crop where you plant corn one year and then you decide that's not a good bet. You're going to plant soybeans the next year. This is a 40 to 50 year decision when we pick a variety, and you know, really right now it's driven by what we feel the direction of the wine market. We're looking to identify what we think we can do great here on our site in the Finger Lakes. So my father started planting vinifera 42 years ago. Fortunately, he planted a little Riesling, and over the years of making wine with Riesling, we really learned how versatile that variety was and how well suited the Finger Lakes was to grow Riesling. So we do have a lot of vinifera varieties here. We have some of them in very small quantity. You know, we have 6 acres of Gewürztraminer. We have 5 acres of Merlot, small quantities of those. We have very large quantities of Riesling. We have 62 acres of Riesling. We feel on the red side, the potential for Cabernet Franc is huge in the Finger Lakes. It's becoming increasingly more known as a variety, and we feel we can do an excellent job at it, so we are expanding our acreage on the Cabernet Franc too. So it is a little bit of a gamble. I mean, it's a big poker game, because if you pick the wrong variety and you invest all these things that we talked about, all the subsurface drainage, the trellis, we haven't even touched on the trellis. I mean,
Sure.
We have posts, we have eight wires in this block, and 5 of those are movable wires, 3 are fixed wires. So there's a huge investment kind of in the infrastructure before we actually can pick a single grape off a block. So if you pick the wrong variety, it's a tough one. We've gone through many cycles over the generations of planting and removing varieties that fell out of vogue. We use about half of the grapes that we grow in our own winery, and we sell about half of the grapes we grow to 30 different wineries in the Finger Lakes. So part of what's driving what we're planting too is what we feel all those wineries collectively will want to purchase as grapes too.
John Cunningham says he doesn't miss the weather.
Hi, John.
Another question here, Ian. So how long before a new vineyard is productive? I know it's kind of depends on the variety, but generally, how long are we looking at?
Yeah, variety and the first couple of years, what the weather is for that. But these we got year 3 we got a small crop,
Yeah.
right? So 3 to 4 years if.
Yeah, well, for reds, yeah,
everything
that's
lines up,
if
yeah.
everything goes well, and just goes back to what John's saying. You know, these decisions are not made lightly.
Yeah.
You're talking
So-
about, even if it's a good decision, you still have a ways to wait.
For us on the red side, when we decide we want to plant a variety, until we can sell a bottle of wine from that harvested fruit is about a 6 to 7 year process. Securing vines from a nursery, planting, nurturing them for those first few years when they don't bear any fruit, picking the fruit, fermenting, vinifying, then it's a year in barrel, and then oftentimes once we bottle, it's a year in bottle before we release it. So it's not for the faint of heart, and you got to be patient. If you're in the grape growing and the winemaking business, you got to have a lot of patience.
No doubt about it. Another question: what's the most difficult and the easiest grapes to grow? At least out of the ones that we do.
Out of the ones we do, nothing is easy. I'll say that. But probably Pinot Noir would rank right up there as about the most difficult.
Right. Oh, I was gonna say, yeah. As far as the most difficult.
Turn that just a little.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because we're talking about thin skins and just pretty temperamental too, right?
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're just there's a lot of things that have to go perfect to really pull off Pinot Noir. We do grow quite a bit of it, and it requires even more attention than the other ones do. But we're still searching for the easy varieties. We haven't found any of them yet.
Yeah. Let us know. Let us know if you see any. A couple of people enjoying the broadcast. Thank you all for checking in. Also looking forward to the harvesting video.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that as well. I think the weather will be a little bit nicer.
We've picked in the snow, so
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, and I mean, all times of day too, right? I mean, Ian, what's the earliest you've been up for harvesting? Or just not gone to bed?
Yeah, not gone to bed, or left at 3 or 4 or 5 and then got up at midnight. Rosé is usually a pretty early one.
Sure, yeah. All right. Oh, Brittany says it looks balmy.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You gotta layer up if you're out in the vineyard. So we should we try some wine here?
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. We actually did bring some Cabernet Franc since we're standing amongst the Cabernet Franc vines. It might be ice wine by now, but we're gonna go and have a drink, and hopefully
We can bring it back by the fire.
yeah. Oh, what's left of the fire? Yeah. Remind everyone you can see the lake. And yeah, let us know what you guys are drinking. Let us know where you're watching from. I know there's California, saw Ohio, Massachusetts, obviously plenty watching here in New York as well. I'll take this downtime also to remind everyone that we are still open 7 days a week. You can come pick up wine between the hours of 12 to 4. Beer as well. Beer ships inside of New York on the wine side. We ship to 19 states. If you are in New York or Pennsylvania, you have orders of 6, 12, or 24 bottles. Shipping is free. If you're in one of the other 17 states that we ship to and you have an order of those sizes, it is 50% off shipping as well. Oh, it's got some people watching in Maine, Chicago as well. Hopefully everyone is not having to put up with as much snow. I think we're getting a couple inches here tonight. Here's a question that we have asking if we have a lot of issues with deer. I'm going to hand the phone over while I pour some wine and let Ian answer that one.
Yeah, we tend to have issues with the younger plantings. They're right at deer level, and they're a little bit more tender and palatable to deer. We tend to hunt quite a bit on our property, and that's kind of another sustainable resource that we have here. And we harvest quite a few deer off the property and enjoy the venison with family and friends year round. So.
And with wine.
And with wine, yeah, very good pairing. We tend to not have as big of issue with deer as some of the other smaller growers around here that might not hunt, but we think that solves a big portion of it.
All right.
Yeah, so we get to enjoy a little Cabernet Franc. Might be a little cooler than ideal temperature, but we're still getting quite a bit of aroma out of it. One of the things that we strive for is super ripe fruit, and in order to get the body and the tannins out of this Cabernet Franc and the flavor, the flavor starts in the vineyard. And if we harvest unripe fruit and send it into the winery, it's impossible for the winemakers to create flavor. The flavors are created out here, and then we turn it over to them. They're capable hands of fermenting and vinifying that, aging it in oak, and blending it. Our winemaking team's got a great palate, and they certainly do a great job at it. But we got to slide over here because I'm getting smoked out from the fire.
Fair enough. A couple people drinking a lot of different things. Some Fathom, Melody, Cab Franc as well. GB says they're supposed to be here tomorrow actually for their birthday, and they love our dry rosés. Well, First off, happy birthday. Sorry that you won't be able to enjoy it with us. Let us know when you're able to make it out, though. We'll definitely gather the crew and sing you a happy birthday. Shoot, we might even sing that now. Have a couple more drinks. All right. Also, and worth bringing up, of course, too, that the dry rosé is made from Cabernet Franc as well. Where did that decision come from? I mean, we make a couple different reds, and you see rosé made from a couple different reds. Why was Cabernet Franc the winner in our eyes?
Yeah, we felt it was perfectly suited for it. It's got the right flavor profile. We love it. We think it's a super spring summer wine if we ever get summer. Cleansing the palate. Actually, I think Alex is going to talk next week. That's a great segue.
Great segue.
Next week with the winemaking team about dry rosé of Cabernet Franc. But it was kind of a natural choice for us. Like I say, we've got that Bordeaux red planted in a good variety, so we're able to continue our red program with it and still have some extra to make rosé out of. Ian touched a little bit on how we make rosé. So he and I get up in the middle of the night on a cool night, and we machine harvest the Cabernet Franc, and we cold soak the fruit so the juice is in contact with the skins for a minimum of 12 hours. And that's what gets that nice pink color that we get in the rosé. And then after those 12 hours of cold soak, we press the grapes out, and we've got our color, and then we vinify it and turn it into wine after that. If Cabernet Franc ferments on the skins for 7 days to 8 or 9 days, that's the color you get right here. That's what we've got for red wine. So same variety of grape. We can just make a red wine out of it if we leave it on the skins longer, or we can make the rosé if we only have a shorter period for soaking on the skins.
Now, Ian, being a grape grower, you have to kind of have a meteorology degree almost to a degree too. Jane had a question, how do you track weather? Is there any, app or place you go to specifically when you're looking to track weather?
Yeah, I mean, there's dozens and dozens of apps. I don't even know what ours is called, but we use something that's pretty specific to our site based on coordinates, and we've been happy with it. It can track precipitation and the amounts of precipitation. So some of these apps say 100% of rain. Well, if it's only 1/100th, that's not a whole lot. It might be 100% that it's gonna rain that much, but
it's pretty precise. Like I said, a lot of them will say, yeah, it's gonna rain on Tuesday afternoon, but we'll look at it and we'll say, yeah, it's gonna rain, but it's 1/100th of an inch, so that means we're still working. And a lot of the forecasters on the TV will say, oh, rainy, cloudy, showery, but we look at it and we're like, oh, the day's perfect, other than a chance of 100th of an inch of rain is like, it's nothing. It's high humidity. So.
Well, and out here it can change on a dime.
But
anyways,
we're looking at the weather all through the growing season, but when we get closer to harvest, then we really dive down into the weather. We start sampling fruit very often in the vineyard and getting the chemical analysis of the juice, and then we begin to look at the weather as far as how long we're going to let the grapes hang before we pick them. And I mean, we are really striving for the ripest fruit we can get, and we oftentimes will stop picking in the morning because we get a heavy dew on the grapes. So the clusters, all of a sudden the temperature will reach the dew point, and we've got dew on the berries, so we stop, and we got to wait till the sun comes up. So we might sit idle for 2 or 3 hours until the sun comes up and burns the dew off, and then we can go again. So there's a lot to it if you want to do it really well, but it's not easy, and that goes back to that question about easy varieties, and it's not an easy profession.
Yeah, this doesn't look very easy. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that, but when you get it right, It is pretty excellent. Now this is the 2017 Cab Franc, so these actual vines right here did not produce any fruit that's in this wine, but check back 2-3 years from now, and we can look back at this and realize that these were the vines that made what we're drinking.
We picked some beautiful fruit off here this last fall. The first vintage off this vineyard. So we're
You can be on the lookout in the rosé then.
we're real pleased with this block. As you look across it, you can see real nice uniform vine growth, and that's really key to having consistency year to year is just having that uniformity in vines.
How do you actually go about planting and making sure that at least physical uniformity, that you've achieved that row by row?
Yeah, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, so back when he was, I don't know, a kid, they did it by hand, and that I never took part in that. But now they have a machine that used to be laser guided and now is GPS guided. So it's got a GPS sensor on it, and what are these?
These are 6 by 8.5.
So every 6 feet, that machine knows it's got a vine ready, a little 1-foot vine from nursery, and the GPS, it signals it and it puts it in the ground, and it's constantly moving. So even if the tractor moves, it's moving and it's keeping it in an exact straight line. And then with the same GPS signal, it knows to jump up whatever amount of spacing to keep your row spacing exactly the same. And that's not ours.
It's a custom.
Custom, yeah.
It's a local grower. Tim Hosmer has that rig, and he goes all the way down the East Coast and he does custom planting. So he'll be here in another couple of weeks, and we'll get some more Cab Franc in the ground. But that precision planting allows us to do a lot more mechanization. So the dehiller that you guys just saw demonstrated is a lot easier when the vines are straight and they're uniformly spaced. If your row does this and your graft unions are out to the side and your vines are not in a straight line, it's a lot more difficult to mechanize some of that stuff. So it goes back to the sustainability question. Labor is tougher to come by, and we feel like if there's certain jobs in the vineyard that we can mechanize and do a good job at it, we're definitely going in that direction. If it's a shortcut and we feel we can do it better by hand, then we still continue to do it by hand. Vineyards are amazingly labor intensive by hand work. So all these were trimmed by hand, they were all tied by hand, they're going to be hand suckered later on this growing season. These are movable wires. So this set of catch wires, this set of catch wires, and this rake wire will all be moved by hand throughout the growing season. But certain operations we can mechanize. We can mechanize the planting. We can mechanize the leaf removal. So we'll do a lot more of these live videos if you guys are finding value in them and you like them, because there's a lot going on, and a lot of people don't know what a vineyard is behind the scenes. But yeah, we can show a lot of things, and we appreciate the good questions and all the good feedback.
Yeah, if you have any more questions, by all means, now would be the time to get them in. I believe we answered all of them as they came through. So thank you guys for tuning in. Let us know what you think of them. If you are tuning in late and didn't get to see the dehiller, once the live stream is done, you'll be able to go back and watch it. It's pretty incredible how a machine that large can do a job that delicate, and it's just one of the many things, one of the many pieces of equipment here that help make this operation the operation that it is.
Alex, we can probably finish this row.
Okay.
From where it's parsed. So if anybody did tune in late, we'll fire it up again, and you can get a little bit more footage of it.
Perfect. All right, that's going to be Debbie asked, did we wish Jesse Rose a happy birthday? I don't believe we did. Sorry, we got GB in there. Jesse, though, as well. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Cheers. Cheers. Hopefully you're enjoying it in a place that's a little bit more warm than here. But
it's not bad if you layer up. I tell everybody, you just got to layer up.
I'm layered everywhere but the hands. That was a mistake. Lesson learned. And all right, so we're gonna get back to the D-Hiller. That'll be kind of our outro music there. Will be the D-Hiller. But if we have some questions, you know, we'll stick around and answer those later. But if not, thank you everyone for tuning in. Stick around. We'll do a little more D-Hilling. We'll be back next week with a discussion on. Nope. Here we'll start. Why don't we start walking toward the D-Hiller? Be here with a discussion next week on the 2019 Rosé with our winemakers, Kevin and Jess. Before that video next Friday, early next week, we're going to have the 2019 Rosé will be available for purchase, so you can drink along with us. That did just go out in the OCC shipment, so if you're a club member and you're going to get the 2019 Rosé already, we hope that you drink along with us. That'll be a really interesting discussion. And yeah, let us know what else you want to see. We don't know how long this isolation will last, but you know, we'll keep pumping out the content in the meantime. And you know, even once we're open again, these have been a lot of fun, and you know, it's great to see people tuning in from all over the country. So if you're not able to join us at the winery, even when we're able to welcome people back, I think we're going to keep these going anyways, so that you know, people can still tune in. I should have had him bring the phone up there too to get a look on the inside, but next time.
Machine's on a side hill, and the legs on the one side are shorter and the legs on the downhill side are longer right now, so he's able to control that from the cab of the machine. How the machine has the wheels at different heights to correspond to the slope of the land.
It's going down a little now, also down the hill and up the hill. All right, one question we got: what's the temperature? Well, snow's not really sticking yet, so I think we're at like 35, 34. Feels a little colder.
Yeah, pretty close to freezing.
Yeah.
I think all night it's supposed to be 30, 32, 31. So we're supposed to end up with several inches of snow by morning.
Yeah, 2 to 5. All right, folks, that is going to do it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll be back.